All right. Hello. My name is Jason Georges. I'm the webmaster for KCRW.com. KCRW.com is the website for the public radio station KCRW. We call ourselves KCRW.com because KCRW.org is a little bit difficult for some of our on-air people to say. So it's smoother to say KCRW.com, and hence we are that, even though we are a public radio station. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about podcasting and the origins of KCRW's podcasting efforts and where we've been and where we're going. And to begin, we started podcasting on March 21st, 2005. We were not the first people to podcast, but we were the largest single organization to put out podcasts. We started with 22 programs, 3 of which were daily podcasts. The rest were weekly podcasts. They ranged in time from 4 minutes to 60 minutes. Initially, we started out encoding them at 48K MP3 mono files. The reasons we did all this were to expand the reach of KCRW programs, to stay on the technological cutting edge, to create new avenues of fundraising, and we thought we could do all this with minimal cost using our existing infrastructure, both in terms of hardware and people power at the station. We met basically our first goal. We did expand the reach of KCRW. Podcasting, initially, even before iTunes came along, it was kind of taking off a little bit amongst the technologically fluent people. And they were constantly looking for new content, and we became known for our podcasts. And we started getting mentioned in newspaper articles and magazine articles as a podcaster. We achieved our second goal. We stayed on the technological cutting edge. Because we were the largest podcaster, people came to us and asked, how did you do it? What do you do? What kind of programs do you use to edit audio? What kind of programs do you use to serve your audio? And we thought that we could potentially use this as a way to make money, though initially podcasting was not that big. And we did achieve our last goal. We did all this on our existing hardware, our existing Apache web server. We had the files located there, and it seemed to be going along smoothly and great. And then along came iTunes. And with iTunes, that was huge for us. Steve Jobs used our treatment program, which is a kind of a Hollywood talk show, as an example in a talk he gave at a developers conference. And after that, just that brief little mention, even before iTunes was podcasting, subscriptions to the treatment went up tenfold. Then iTunes launched. They featured us as one of their initial podcasts. They created a very nice page for us that we supplied the graphics to, but they laid it out. They listed us as a banner on their podcasting page, and we had a very successful and at the same time unexpected thing happen to us. We went from having just a nice kind of peaking at around a 40 megabit per day traffic to our website, coming down to around 15 or so during the weekend. And Monday was a normal day. And then Tuesday, iTunes happened. And we more than doubled our bandwidth coming out of our site and out of our station. We crashed our server. We had to set up another server very quickly to move all of our podcasts on, to segment it from traffic going to our regular website. It was crazy and crazily successful, too. And as a result of that, we grew our audience beyond our wildest dreams. With iTunes, we achieved over 100,000 downloads on our first day, and over 300,000 downloads in the first week. Bandwidth usage went through the roof. We added additional MP3 servers, and because we were the people that were listed on the front page, because we had the promotion, We were featured in all the press articles. iTunes launches featuring ESPN, ABC, and KCRW. So it raised our profile. Around August 2005, initially all of our podcasts were talk shows that we produced ourselves, that we held all the rights to, and that the hosts of the shows all agreed that it's fine, we can podcast it, no problems, nobody's concerned about rights or their image. We were a little bit scared at first to get into the music podcast area. What do we do about bands? What do we do about labels? Who's conscious of image? Everybody's kind of a little bit crazy about offering a download of their content, of their music. So we tiptoed into this with a few bands. And our initial band, the initial bands that we did the podcasting with were unsigned, unknown bands. And as a result of the podcasts that they featured on our site through iTunes, downloads and purchases of their music on their websites went through the roof. So they had kind of a side effect of our success in promoting their bands. And we set up a rule that still exists today, that we post downloadable podcasts of live performances. These are 40-minute long podcasts that feature about 8 to 10 songs and an interview in between sets of the songs for about 2 weeks. And for the longest time, it was always listed in the top 100 new subscribed podcasts on the iTunes top 100 page. And occasionally we're still in there as well whenever we have a new artist or a band that is of note. In January of 2006, we started to do video podcasts. For the last 4 years, the station has been videoing bands that come into the station. About 2 years ago, we upgraded our video system so that we have a system of 4 remote control cameras that one person maintains and mixes, and we put all this stuff together for under $10,000, and it was great until the camera started breaking and we ran into replacement cost problems. But these videos are, we're just sitting on our site streaming in real audio, but we had the tapes of them, so we started going back and re-encoding videos and making podcasts out of them. The podcasts were in the M4V format, or H.264 codec that QuickTime puts out. And initial launch of it, we had around over 7,000 downloads in January. This presentation was made in February, so and it was done in about the second week of February. So 2 weeks into February, we had 700,000. That month rounded out at about 12,000. So not quite doubling the first month of video podcasts. Now we're in a phase where we are putting maybe 2 or 3 videos up about every couple weeks, maybe more. It's slowed. The pace of updating the videos has slowed down because bands have tightened up a little bit. Not as many bands are allowing us to do a video download of their performance. Again, bands are, or more importantly, labels are a little bit image conscious, we think. But still, we're averaging over 7,000 and over nearly 10,000 downloads a month for video content. So many podcasts, so little time. Podcasts take a lot of time to make. From a production standpoint, I have a staff of 4 people that work along with me, 2 of which are audio editors. One is a video editor, and one's a content editor that produce the KCRW website. We upload anywhere from 10 to 12 hours of audio to the site every day. And we also produce videos whenever there's a band in the studio. We upload that as a streaming content and sometimes as a podcast. We produce audio in multiple formats, everything from real audio to Windows Media to QuickTime to MP3. or the M4V for video. And we do all this with our small little staff, and we have different programs to help us do all this, but it ultimately takes a lot of our day just editing, mixing the final audio for the website. We upload it. So this process needed some fixing. In order for us to maintain doing it, we needed to come up with some sort of automated way of putting on a bumper, adding a little trailer, adding a little underwriting credit to go with the podcasts. So we worked with a group of programmers from WNYC in New York City and came up with a really simple tool, a web-based tool that will take an ad and a bumper and maybe a trailer file and automatically assemble these to a source raw file of audio, and do this on a scheduled way where we can make a change on a spur of the moment practically and re-encode or recombine all of our MP3 files with new ads or new underwriting bumpers or new trailers on the end. This works for the most part and is great because it takes away that step of the editing process of adding a bumper, especially for the podcast, when we edit the files. So we're still using that system, and for the most part it's working. It has a few little hiccups. Right now I believe it's cutting the trailer off. But it's a software development, as you all know, is a ongoing process, and we are right there with everybody. So making podcasts pay. Our initial sponsorship was for I believe a 6-month period for $100,000 by Lexus, and it was to put just a very simple message in the beginning of the podcast. KCRW podcasts are supported by Lexus. That was about it. And for that, they were on all of our podcasts that went out. They got huge promotions because we had thousands and thousands of downloads through iTunes, through people that were all across the country. And that ad helped us to get a new host for our podcast. The bandwidth costs for doing this are enormous. We were putting out over 100 megabits daily, or megabits peak daily for podcast traffic. So we needed to find some way of either advertising supported or somebody to host these files. And our friends over at AOL actually came to our rescue. And they agreed to host our podcast in exchange for putting an AOL message on the front of the podcasts. And so now our podcast files are actually hosted through AOL, distributed through Alchemy, and we have a system that automatically uploads it from our server over to the AOL server, and life is fairly good. They've come up with a system that manages the distribution fairly nicely. So lastly, bringing podcasters back. So KCRW.com is a website. It's a web identity of the radio station. And as this podcasting phenomena took off, much of it happened through iTunes. Some of it happened through Yahoo. Some of it happened through the various different podcasting portals. Some of it happened through our own website. But the majority of the people that get our podcasts come through our outside sources, outside of our own website. So there's this challenge as the web for a public radio station decentralizes. How do we entice people back? What do we do within a podcast file to get them to check out our website, to find out, oh, gee, there's a music podcast that you're watching, but there are thousands of other archived video and audio performances back on the home website. How do we communicate that? How do we get them to type into their browser outside of iTunes, go to kcrw.com. And we're still struggling with that issue right now a little bit. But one of the promising things Apple has done, they came up with this kind of an enhanced AAC format for audio. Or maybe it's not enhanced, maybe it's a feature of the AAC codec. But you can put in chapter marks within the audio and have different images show up and have different web links show up so that when you're listening to a file, you can click on it and go to a website that's being mentioned at a particular point. That might be something we're going to get more involved in moving forward in the future. We're also looking into ways of producing our shows differently at the station to reference the website, to talk about, you can find pictures, you can find links, you can find additional content, you can find a longer version of this show or this interview at kcrw.com. So there's a bit of a paradigm shift that is going on in radio. NPR is actually doing a fairly good job of this right now. If you listen to programs like All Things Considered and Morning Edition, after every segment, they mention their website. They mention, for enhanced or for more links, or to read the document that they were talking about, or to see pictures of what we're talking about, go to our website. We need to work and do a better job of doing that through our own programs that we produce as well. And we are constantly in search of new ideas to keep podcasts fresh. Podcasting has been around now for approaching almost 2 years, which seems like a short amount of time if you look at the scope of the internet and everything, but it's actually a long time. And podcasting is kind of, everybody's doing it. It's part of iTunes. It's an established part of the way people get content, get information, and do their routine. But what's the next thing? What's the next podcasting phenomenon? What's the next streaming audio phenomenon? What can we do to keep our website and our online efforts fresh and relevant and moving forward? So we're constantly looking out for that, and perhaps what Google is doing and the efforts you all are undertaking with the way you search the web, with the way you index things, with the relationships you draw out of partners in the world. Hopefully there's possibly a place for KCRW to be part of that and to allow our content to be more accessible and more noticed, and in turn have Google be more noticed and more accessible. So that's about it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to.
So just before I ask my question, I was going to mention that the video is probably going to get posted, as long as Jason and everyone's okay, probably get posted to Video Google, so be aware of that on questions that you ask. So, but you had mentioned that you guys started off with 60-something podcasts when you initially started doing podcasts?
We started off with 20 shows.
20 shows.
Each of those shows had, starting off with one show that was podcast, and that grew to about a month's worth of programs. So for a weekly show, like To The Point or Which Way LA, it would have anywhere from 20 to 30 individual MP3 files that could be downloaded up at a given time. Because we had it on our own servers, after about 30 days, we'd take it off the server and it would no longer be available for a podcast. That's
how many are you doing now?
Now it's about 2 months. We even though it's being hosted by AOL, we still have concerns about consuming their servers, and we want to keep.
Have you increased the number of shows that you have?
Now the number.
Because you guys now have like
about 26.
During this whole time, you guys started the KCRW Music.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it has unique programming now of its own.
Yes. So on top of the Morning Becomes Eclectic music podcast, we also have a podcast called Music Exchange, which features one band that's talked about between Nick Harcourt in LA and Steve Lamacq in London at the BBC. They talk about an artist and then they play a song. Because we're unsure of the rights to that song, we go up about anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds and then fade it out. NPR actually set up an agreement with the RIAA to allow for public radio to sample 60 seconds of music as opposed to the, I think the traditional is like 15 or 20 seconds. That can be sampled online. So we're taking advantage of that. We also have a podcast called Today's Top Tune, which is an entire song by itself, no underwriting attached to it, no bumper. It's just a song to download to your iPod or player or your music collection. And we see that this is kind of a lost leader. We want it to get out, to get KCRW known, to get our message across of we are a source of knowledge of music and everything, and to support us, our message is basically this is not all free. It's paid for by individuals.
Did you negotiate with RIAA for that?
No, we negotiate with individual bands and their labels.
So do you pay them, or do you normally negotiate this as a promotional thing for them?
It's a promotional thing.
Okay.
And so the top tune is supposed to be up there for a day, 24-hour period. For various technical reasons and scheduling reasons, it's usually up there for a little bit longer. And they know that, but it's a promotional tool. A single song by an artist that's not on the charts yet, available through KCRW, gets their name noticed. It gets them noticed. And they're in iTunes already. They might as well type in the name of the band in iTunes, and oh, lo and behold, they have a whole album I can buy for $9 or 99 cents for a track.
Have you considered uploading things into Google Video, even the audio-only programs?
We did, actually. We were approached a couple of years ago when Google Video was just starting to put our video into Google Video. And the reason why we didn't had less to do with, is this technically feasible, as it had to do with we just don't have the time. Our video is pretty much all encoded in real video format. That's changed now that I have a full-time video person working on staff. He's been going through and kind of re-encoding all of these DAT tapes or mini DV tapes we have of the performances into a big server we have, into formats that can be exported out into other video formats when we have the time. So potentially there's a place for KCRW to get involved in Google Video. And maybe it might be, I don't know if it's possible, but if you host the video file in a Flash format, is it possible for us to then also feature that on our site? Or so? Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more flexible if you throw something at it, and it'll re-encode it to whatever it wants.
Cool. So we should talk.
You could probably also upload the audio program. You might have to make a fake, flash screen that just sits there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a distribution point.
Very good.
Can you explain what bumpers, trailers, and underliners are?
Think about a car. On the car, you have, in the front of the car, you have a front bumper. It's in the audio, the bumper is the thing at the front. A trailer is the thing at the back, the audio source that goes on the end. So in the bumper of an audio file, we might have KCRW's promotion. This podcast is produced by KCRW and featuring thousands of hours of audio at kcrw.com, supported by Lexus, and here's AOL. And these, before we had our little assembly program, we were using our audio editing software to paste these in together and saving off a new MP3 file that contained all these things inclusive. And that just took too long to do. So we created an automated system to put those things together.
So as a rule of thumb, you guys haven't. Is there a reason that you don't actually overlap any of the broadcasts with these trailers? Are they? Is there any overlap between the audio of whatever you recorded, the song, and then the bumper or the trailer?
Not right now.
Yeah.
No. We tend to keep everything segmented so that.
But is that for technical reasons, or is it like musicians don't want you talking over?
It's just what we do.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we wanted to, we could have a fade over or crossfade to make it kind of a watermark, so to speak.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is it would allow you to maybe musicians would allow you to post their content longer if they knew, at the last 10 seconds there was kind of, Nick Hardcore comes in and.
The curious thing about our relationship with musicians and labels is that there's not a lot of dialogue about what goes on the website. There's an understanding, and there's something that they read and agree to. But as far as I know, they probably wouldn't care what we did with it, as far as it was presented in a positive light and was promoting their artist or the band.
Yeah.
I hope. I cross my fingers.
It's probably the major record labels that care more about that than the band.
Oh, yeah. I had a call a few weeks ago from Sony in New York wanting to know about our Top Tune podcast. And they're looking at it and they're going, you say it's only 24 hours, but I see 3 podcasts here. How do you explain that? It's like, well, we promote it for a day. And it was kind of, I hope that didn't sour their relationship with us. But, we are what we are. We're a very, our general manager, Ruth Seymour, talks about, when we do pledge drives, talks about we're a little public radio station in the basement of a cafeteria building at a community college. We really are a small entity that produces these huge things. And we're doing the best we can. And we're not a Google. We're not a big company that has all these resources all around you. So we're constantly scraping to get by and to do the best we can.
Your podcast, as far as, or even viewing on the website itself, music versus talk shows, what's the breakdown? Is it more music, folks downloading music now than ever? Because it sounds like, you initially started off with just
our number one
show.
podcast is the show. Harry Shearer's the show.
Yeah.
Is that a music show, or is it a talk show?
I know plenty of people that wish you wouldn't actually do music kind of show.
Exactly.
I'm not one of them.
And actually, for rights reasons, we do have to edit his show and take out some songs that he doesn't have permission to, or in the podcast, trim them down to a few seconds of sample. And so his podcast is often around 43 minutes, 44 minutes long, whereas his show is an hour long, which probably your friends who don't like the music should download the podcast.
Or the one guy that I was thinking of, I don't know what his thoughts were. So.
But he's the number one podcast. Morning Becomes Eclectic is often number 2 in terms of number of downloads. Number 3 is an hour-long news program called To The Point. And it's a big podcast file. It's a daily podcast. And we get thousands and thousands and thousands of people downloading that show. And whenever it's late, we get thousands and thousands of emails saying, what happened to The Point? And there's some guy in Florida that's just on it every day. It's like, it's 2 o'clock, it's not here yet. Where is it? I'm trapped by hurricanes. I can't, this is my only connection to the outside world, is this show. Where is my podcast? So we definitely have a caring audience and people that we try to be beholden to.
Because your audience has broadened considerably in the last couple of years, have you guys altered your program, or do you when you look at your new programming ideas as far as what you might be able to do more national? I mean, are you doing?
Well, we do have a lot of national programs. Our To The Point's a national program carried in major cities across the country. Left, Right, and Center is a 4-way show talking from all points of political view about the major issues of the day. It's a weekly show. We have entertainment shows, The Business and The Treatment, that are nationally distributed. We have a book show, Bookworm, which is nationally distributed. It's carried on other radio stations. I'm leaving something out. What else? Was that it? What? Le Show. Oh, Le Show. And Harry Shearer is everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
So, we do have the advantage of having a voice outside of the internet to promote the internet. And without that voice, I think we wouldn't be as large as we are.
Well, I mean, but I'm wondering, like, new programming ideas that you guys are floating, that this national audience that you have, does that weigh more heavily on decisions on new?
Well, it has actually. We had a music stream going that was featuring live music whenever we were playing it on air, and then kind of rebroadcast to the previous evening's shows during times when we didn't have music playing on our simulcast, and addressing that very point of, what more can we do to address a national or global audience? We chucked out that format of music stream and replaced it with each show is a 2-hour produced show of Morning Becomes Eclectic, of Metropolis, of Nocturna, of Cafe LA, of all of our main music shows. And we made a stream that's comprised of these 2-hour shows making up an 8-hour segment that's repeated 3 times a day. And each of those shows is available for syndication now. Morning Becomes Eclectic is going to be heard in Alaska. Alaska will have the best public radio north of continental United States. That was the exact idea. We have a person trying to market all of these shows to other radio stations and also to other streams as well, other internet radio stations. So if there's an internet stream that's looking for content, they can get KCRW's program and on a regular basis, and we distribute it via the internet, so the stations can download the sound files and then play them as they wish. And we have playlists that go along with everything, so they can keep all that up to date. Yeah.
What percentage of your download connections and streaming connections come from outside the United States?
Ooh, that's a big question. It's probably around 30% come from outside the U.S. or from outside the U.S. / unknown. There's a very long, an interesting graph. I don't have it on me right now, but it shows the distance from LA of connections. The peak is in LA, and then as you move farther away, it goes down, and then it goes down as, if you think about the continental United States, West Coast, East Coast. So the middle of the country, it's down a little bit. There's a little spike in Kansas. And then it gets to the East Coast and it has another peak of traffic. We have a lot of people on the East Coast that come to our website. And then the tail goes off. And that tail outside of the United States that goes way down are all the connections overseas or more than the distance to New York outside of LA. And it's stunning to see the reach of KCRW and where people are getting us. If we plot a graph of all our IP connections around the world, it makes a map of the world. And if you plot a map of Google's IP connections around the world, it probably makes mountains around the world. At least we get the outlines of continents.
As far as your new programming, specifically the talk show formats, how are those ideas generated, and where do you find the hosts for those programs?
It changes. It's different people. Often new hosts come from being guests on other shows, or come from ideas that are generated in-house that come to fruition, and a host is found for those shows. Sometimes people send in tapes and CDs, and I have this great idea, and this would be perfect, and if Ruth is in an open mood, she might listen to it, and who knows? We had a show that was pitched to us called Final Curtain last year. It was obituary show for the radio. It was a really interesting idea and a really interesting show. But it became a monthly show, and the resources involved to produce this one monthly show were so big because you're researching people, you're producing sound bits and trying to gather sound clips of a person's life to put in there, that it was just not practical for us to maintain producing it. So it eventually got canned. But it was an interesting show for about a year. There are other shows that grew out of pitches. The Business is a new show that it was co-developed by Variety magazine, one of the editors at Variety. They're in the business, they're connected, and one of the producers at the station, and they put together this show, and it's a hit show. It's being syndicated nationally and picked up. Even got picked up by NPR as a distributor, which is a huge honor to have them, featuring one of our shows. So there are different ways, but it doesn't happen very often. Anybody else? Well, if there are no,
Thank you very much for coming out.
thank you all very much.